G'day, I'm Bruce. In this video I'm going to give you all an update on what's going on with Wally Wabco with the 12-cylinder GM in it. This is Wally Wabco, a 60-year-old mining truck. The main problem with old Wally is when we moved it after it's been sitting for about 20 plus years, the Hydra Air suspension set up on it, the seal on this side packed it in pretty badly, and that meant that this side could sag down. So the strut is actually the suspension, the shock absorber, everything all in one, and it has oil in the bottom and nitrogen gas in the top. Once that bottom seal went, this side just sagged down, and being such a rigid machine, that meant that when this side's down, it takes the weight off the wheel on the opposite side, and if you go to drive anywhere, that other wheel just wants to spin because this side has slumped down so far. With all the wet weather we've had over probably the last 3 years, it was nearly impossible for us to move it or do anything with it. It's been a bit of a joint effort. A mechanic called William, he came along and he's a heavy engine mechanic in the mine, so he's used to working on big equipment, and I tried to undo most of these bolts, but I only got 4 of them done out of the big collection of bolts. Anyway, he had a stronger impact gun than what I had, so he rolled up this morning, and by that time I'd already had the tie rod end off, the drag link or whatever you want to call it, and this big nut thing here undone on the bottom. So that was a bit of a head start, but then everything from then onwards was the way he had to strap it, the wheel and the top of that to the forklift. He was really good at doing all that, and he worked all that out. The bolts that I couldn't get undone, he had a stronger rattle gun, so he got those undone, no trouble. From what we've heard, it'll probably take a couple of weeks before we get the strut back again, if all goes to plan, and if they reckon if they can't get the seals, they might be able to get somebody to make the seals, which is pretty good. So a bit of excitement here. A lot of people have made inquiries about what's happened to Wally and whatever. So we'll go around and put some oil back in the transmission, put the main strainer back in the bottom, and prepare for, in the future, if we can get that back on there, we'll be out there burning around in Wally. You can see that this here's the wheel, and the forklift actually went that way with the strut on it. But it was a pretty big assembly. Everything was really heavy, but I suppose that's what you'd expect with something this size. And it was surprisingly easy how easy that part was to pull apart. This is a weird looking nut it had on the bottom of the strut, which actually came off of this part here. And I thought, well, we haven't got a Wabco spanner. I guess there probably is such a thing to go onto there. And I thought if that thing's done up with hundreds of foot-pound torque, we might never get it off. So last night I very carefully got a cold chisel, like William said. And he said, if you just get a cold chisel on that carefully, I think that'll come undone. And it did. He was right about that. So before that, I'm thinking, oh, that will be impossible to get that off. It'll have to have gas and heat and much hammering. But because everything around there is pretty oily and greasy, that's probably another reason it came undone fairly easily. And of course, the other thing I thought, which was going to be pretty hard, can be difficult enough on cars and four-wheel drives, to get the tie rod end to let go, because it's all pretty big gear. And I thought, oh, well, that's going to take a fair bit of work. So I put a puller on that and did it up as good as I could and tapped it with a hammer, and it came undone quite easily. So that was a surprise too. So I had a couple of hoses coming off here, so I made sure I cleaned all around them very well and blocked the other ends and taped them up so they can't get dirt in them. But you can see the brake shoes here. You can see the linings around there. They're the springs to pull the brake shoes off. There's the adjustment there. You turn that around and that pushes the shoe out. This end here's got the piston. There'll be rubbers and a piston in there, so it's actually pushing that end out. This end's where you adjust it to take up the slack. It's exactly the same idea on the other side here, but it's in reverse. It's got the adjustment on this side, and it's got the piston over here. When you apply the brakes, fluid comes down through here and pushes that piston out. One on this side, one on that side, pushes the shoes out. That's how the brakes work. Here's the strut on the right hand side of the machine. You can see there now. That's the piece that's been pulled off on the other side, and you can see that chrome part down there, and obviously there's a seal in there, and that's the part that was leaking on the other side. It was all a bit of a rush job because William was due to go back to another job site to go back to work again. The cameraman wasn't available at the time either, so if you want to see the thing go back together again, if the cameraman's got a bit of free time, I'll see if I can get him here to show how it all goes back together. I guess it's going to be more difficult to put back together than what it was to pull off. If you'd like to see it all go back together, leave a comment below and I'll see if I can get the three of us all here, William, the cameraman, and myself, and see if we can all put it all back together on film. Another thing too, there's a hydraulic line, I think it's coming back from the cooler. Obviously one line will go up from the transmission and a line goes back, and it's somewhere running along in there, and getting near the end of it there somewhere it's got a leak. I don't know whether it's actually the O-ring leaking or whether it's the line itself where it goes onto the coupling just on the end of the hose. But anyway, it's going to be very difficult to pull that hose out. I think it runs along inside of there. It may even have to have the exhaust manifold pulled off to get in there to get at it. It's the sort of thing we could probably take it out and drive it around and probably tip the back out. It's probably still got a full of water and reeds and all that rubbish in the back of it, but it's not the sort of thing you'd want to be running for too long because it has got an oil leak there. It's almost impossible to see, but it's where this outer line goes up into the transmission. I think both the engine and the transmission have been rebuilt. The transmission's got a rebuild tag on it, and the engine runs so well and the transmission works well, so they've probably both been reconditioned at the same time. It's funny how time goes by quickly when you get older. It doesn't seem like a year. I had the bottom part of the sump off here and it had a bit of a dent in it, so I knocked that out, put it back on again, cleaned everything out, put new filters on here, and I wrote the date on there. And isn't it funny? It's just about a year since I've worked on Wally, I suppose you'd say, or since it would have been running too, I guess. Right, now off to the transmission to do some work on it. Someone said to me a while back to use a 303 rifle cleaner. Obviously it would have been somebody in Australia, and one time every farmer had a 303 rifle and a 22, and I thought that's a good idea. So this is what I've got here. It was one my father had for many years, and if I can get in there and just, you've got to keep turning it the same direction so you don't lose the rag off the end. It's like a piece that screws on the end there, and it's got like raised sharp little nodules on it, I suppose you'd say. And the rag just sticks to that if you keep turning it the same direction. It's like all things, this is the lowest point, so this is the part that's going to have the most dirt and rubbish in it. It's funny, you'd think all the oil would have drained out of there, but it hasn't. Laying down the bottom corner. This is the third transmission oil change for old Wally, and the cameraman thought there was still moisture in the oil, even though I don't think there is. So we've had this draining like this for quite a while now, and if there would have been a leak somewhere up in the radiator, this would have a cooler going through the radiator with water, but I don't reckon there's any water in the thing at all. And somebody else left a comment there one time, and they said even something like this sitting out in the weather for years, all the oil draining back to the transmission, they said they can still gain moisture. Even just from sitting, you can still get moisture in the oil, which could be right too, I believe that. So while the cameraman thinks that's moisture leaking in from the radiator, from that water cooling circuit, where the radiator water cools the transmission oil, I don't think it is, because I reckon if it was leaking, we'd probably have water dripping out of here by now, and this has been draining for a long time. But better to be overcautious. And if you had to rebuild this transmission, I'd hate to think what it would cost. I'll just get this bit of rag now, I'll just turn it in the opposite direction. If I can find the end of it. There we are. And you can see on the end here, so the cameraman can get a photo of that. I really need some more rag soon. Let me just put that on there, and those little grippers get a grip on there. And if you turn it you hold it there and turn the rod, you'll get quite a good grip on there. That might take a little bit. And the trick is to keep turning it that same way. It's winter here now, so it gets dark early. Don't know whether I can turn that around or not. It's a pretty icky job, but it's having a bit of trouble getting a grip on it. But I've got about as much out as I can with the rag, so I thought I might try the vacuum arrangement next. I'll just sit this up here for the time being. It's supposed to be 30 grade ore, but it looked a bit thicker than that, but I suppose it is winter. I'll just run that through there. If you want to make it suck up more, cut that off on an angle like that, then you put that in there and it'll vac closer to the bottom. Just going to put some eye protection on, and I think there's a hornet's nest in that one. So I'm just going to hold that over there carefully and give that hornet's nest a blast. Might as well check a lot of them. I'll just try the other nozzle. This other nozzle is a bit bigger. Probably too big. Now next up is a strainer. I've got it sitting here in this pipe. I'll just give that a bit of a blow off in case any of that hornet's nest went on it. Looks good, nice and clean. It's got a big magnet in the middle there. Don't know whether the camera will show that, but a bit in there's magnetic. So it's one of the few strainers that works from the inside out. Particles go in here, oil goes in through here, and comes out that way. But they do that because it's got the magnet on the inside. So next up is I'm going to put some grease on this. That way somewhere in the future if someone goes to pull it off again, but they won't break the gasket, or us probably. If we go to pull it off again and change the oil again, we know the gasket's not going to rip to pieces. Saves making a new gasket. And if you look on here, you can tell the way it was. It's got a dent in the bottom, which is where rocks would have been coming through underneath and dent at the bottom. But look at this weird looking hole here. We can see that on the gasket there. We can see the pattern on the gasket. So we know that that's the way. It's got to go like that. That's exactly the way it came out. Because these holes are what they call blind, see how the holes won't go right through into the oil? That means we don't have to put sealer on the bolts. But the older Land Rovers, they had a plate that bolted on the side of the transmission, and if they didn't have sealer on them, oil would leak out around the threads, and people would be saying, oh, that Land Rover, look how much it's leaking. Yeah, that's why it's leaking, because it's supposed to have sealer on the threads on the bolts. Some of these bolts are a bit different lengths to others too, which is a bit weird, but you won't need very much. I'll put that one up the top. I don't know whether it's which way they're supposed to go. Normally, if they're near oil, they probably won't rust up, but if they're near water, they probably will rust up. Don't need much. That one feels a bit tight. Try it up there. That's the one that had the hornet's nest in it. I was going to say, I'll just hold this in here, put the lid back on there for a tick, in case there is hornet's nest in there. I'll hold that in tight. Looks like it's okay. Yeah, isn't that funny? That one was tight in there, but oh well, just the way it goes. Sometimes some bolts will fit in one hole better than another bolt. I'll just have to get my air ratchet now and tighten them up. Probably a shifting spanner. Because it's a tapered plug, you probably wouldn't worry about putting thread tape on it. As you tighten it up, it actually gets tighter and tighter this way. It's fatter at this end than what it is at that end. So it'll probably just go in there like that. I've got it nice and clean. It's got to start soon. There we go. Let's get a shifting spanner for that. I'll go and get a spanner for those other ones. Just go around and check them. Right, that's done. Next up will be a shifter. I better go this way or someone will say, "You've got that shifter on back to front," which I would have too. That's probably about it. Right, just got that done. Now I might be able to shift some of the stuff out the way a bit. It's pretty hard to see it, but there's the filler right there. My finger's touching it there. Just a cap, like a galvanised cap for probably 1.25 or 1.5 pipe, whatever that is, water pipe. Starting to get a bit cold now. Neither I or the cameraman have got jumpers on, so we might call it quits now and come back in the morning. We've got our filters here ready to go, and there's the filter canisters there. So we will change them in the morning if all goes to plan, and then we'll put some oil in old Wally again, and all this is looking forward to starting Wally up and maybe driving. Well, we're back here. It's early in the morning now. We're getting ready to put our filters in. Even though they're branded Komatsu, they are the right ones for this truck. Apparently Komatsu must make these filters. There's 2 filters other than the screen down in the sump on the transmission, and both of these have cartridges inside. To get them off, I've got to undo those bolts at the back of the canisters, take the canisters off, and the cartridges are sort of sprung loaded inside. Next up, I'll just blow the dust off around where the canisters seal. They still look fairly clean from the last time they were changed. There's another little trick you can do too if you really want to make sure they go back in the same spot. Just mark them with something. I'll mark the other one on top here. If they go back the same, probably less chance of them leaking. Should be right to catch the oil. Yeah, pretty snug fit too. Look at that, they've got my glove. It's that spring-loaded bizzo. Yeah, you can see from that close-up there's still a bit of moisture in that oil. You can see it's a bit milky looking there where the filters come off of. Looks a bit milky too. Tight. This one's more awkward to get at. There we go. Yep. They're both off now. You can see up inside the housing there now. Yep, they could do with a bit of a rinse out. They're pretty clean, really. I suppose they've only done about, what, maybe about an hour's work, maybe a bit more than that. I'll get the other one and pull the centre out a bit. Remember, it's always cheaper to change the oil than what it is to change the transmission. Always. They look pretty good, but I will just give them a wash out with some diesel. Time for some diesel. I can hear those kookaburras laughing. I think I'll have to go and get a long brush. This one will be next. I will go and get a long handle brush. Just give that a little brush inside, make it nice and clean. That'll work perfectly. There's like a bit of hard sludge in there. That was all cleaned out last time. You can see how there's like hard sludge just there in the corner. I suppose it's settled out in a year. I can hear the wampu. That's the wampu fruit dove in the background. I don't normally hear them. He's over in that direction. That looks pretty good. Maybe one more. The birds are all awake at this time of the morning. You can see where it's got sludge laying on the lowest part. I'm surprised at having still having a bit of moisture in the oil. Maybe just one more. Which one's the inner? This one here's got the straight pen mark. I put an arrow on one and a straight mark on the other one, but I've just about wiped it off. I guess at this time of the day the pen mark's pretty slow at drying, and if I wipe it, I'll wipe the pen mark off, so I reckon that's probably right to go back on now. I'm just going to vac out around the edge of the, if I can get in there. It's pretty hard to get at. Just get the outer edge. If you don't clean the outer edge, by the time you get them started, you'll be picking up dirt. It's looking pretty good. Yep, time for the new filters. That's the inner. There should be enough oil in that around on the O-ring that when I screw it up, it won't chew the O-ring up. There's probably still a little bit of oil or whatever around the edge there too, so it should be right to fit. There's my mark there, which will go to the top, which will match the other mark. This is going to be extremely difficult to get at. can't get a start. The bolt's too high. I know what I've got to do. No, I can't get that right. I think I've got it started. Eventually. Got that exhaust pipe right on my way. There's my marks. If I can hold the outside of the canister. Keep that up a bit. Rightio. I'll just get another spanner. Right, that should be good. Next. Just wipe that off in the edge there where it was touching. Clean that edge off a little bit. It's still fairly oily. I've got this nice clean rag here. That looks good. Just got to get that filled without dropping it. There we go. This one should be a bit easier than the other one. Of course, it has got a spring in there too, which makes it more difficult. I'll go back a bit, back to where my marks are. There they are. Just turn that back a whisker. Right. Very good. I'll just tighten that up a little bit more. Very good. Done. Yeah, the far one's got a single stroke, and the one on this side I put like an arrow on this side. If you do that, you can always get them sitting back in the same place where they've been comfortable for the last 30 years or whatever. There's the filler. You can see that cap on top unscrews. That's where we're going to put the oil back in, through the top of there. It's not the easiest place to get to, but I can hear the dirt hitting the cardboard. That shouldn't be too bad. There we are. It's coming undone nicely. I'll just wipe that. There is something up above there. I'll give that a little wipe too, whatever it is. A rod or a lever. Anything like that, you're bound to bump them when you're trying to put the oil pipe in. The filler pipe, put some oil back in, so if I clean all that up a bit now. It's an awkward place to get at, so it's very easy to bump anything with dirt on it, which we don't want to do. And sometimes when you're pumping oil, you can't get a very good view of what's going on when you're outside. So anywhere around here that's got anywhere the pipe might touch, I'll just wipe that down a little bit. That looks better. Get that cap off. I'll give that a bit more of a wipe around underneath the cap. It's so easy to misjudge where the thing is going and touch the side. And if there's loose dirt there, well, it'll end up going inside the transmission when you put the pipe in, if you touch the outside. There we go. Give that a little bit of a wipe around the edge too while I'm at it. We've got the oil here ready to go. These old transmissions take straight 30 grade. We've got 30 grade in mobile here. So I'll just blow the top off here now and get rid of the dirt. It's amazing how quickly things rust around here, but I suppose we've had all that wet weather. Look how the tops of the drums have gone rusty. Well, we're right to cart them around now. That is tight. I might just carry that separately in case it falls out on the ground. Rightio, away we go. It's a really cold morning and the hose is nearly like as stiff as a piece of steel. Eventually. Well, I guess you know how it goes. Whenever I'm pumping oil, I've got to tell a story. So today's story is about years ago. Shane used to have his machinery resting at my place, sometimes in between jobs, sometimes it needed a bit of work doing on it. And he had all sorts of gear, could turn up here, and I had a pretty wide driveway to get in and out of. So anyway, Shane used to have all sorts of stuff here. People would drive past looking in, oh, I wonder what's in there today. Could be a dozer, could be an off-road truck, could be a grader, could be anything. So anyway, Shane used to say to me, oh, is there anything you'd like me to do before I go, before I shift this machine? Anyway, I said, yeah, there's a tree near the house. I said, could you shift that sometime? I said, it's a Trilliana. Some people call them Gadagis. It's a tree that mainly comes from North Queensland. That's where it grows originally. So anyway, he said, yeah, that'll be fine. He said, go and get a chain and I'll get the Moxie, the 30-ton Moxie. And he said, I'll rip it out the ground with the Moxie. And he said, as I'm driving away, he said, the tree will fall in the back of the Moxie. And then he said, you'll have to work out where you want me to take it to. And I said, oh, you reckon the Moxie will do it? And he said, yeah, it'll do it. I said, oh, I don't know. I said, you're not on the dozer now. I said, you can't rip around the bottom of it. But I said, we have had rain, so the ground will be a bit soft. So anyway, we get everything lined up. Anyway, Shane has the first go at it. No, couldn't get it. Shook the tree a fair bit. And I thought, oh, I don't know whether he's going to get it. And he said, stand back. He said, I'm going to get it this time. So he has about another 3 goes. And eventually the tree comes out of the ground with a big pile of dirt on the roots, big hole in the ground. And the tree falls right in the back of the Moxie. Now it all worked out just right. And he said to me, right, where do you want me to dump it? And I said, oh, just dump it over there in the paddock. I said, and I'll be able to cut it up and burn it. So it's just amazing. I suppose a 30-ton Moxie is a pretty big machine, but it's still on rubber tyres. And I thought, oh, you probably have to be on tracks to look like getting it. But it's just amazing. So that was just another thing that Shane did. And a lot of times he'd have a low loader waiting out the front. Could be on the side of the road, or it could be in my place. He'd drive on. Sometimes he'd reverse on with the Moxies. And I used to think, oh, gee. Especially with the 40-ton Moxies, I used to think, are they going to fall off the side or what? But he just worked with the mirrors and he just look at where he was going, take his time, back the Moxie onto the low loader, and away it'd go. So that was just another little job that Shane did for me in between other jobs, which I always appreciated him doing little things like that for me. So that was a story about how the Moxie got the tree out the ground, which I didn't think it was going to do. It's a freezing cold morning and the oil is that thick. It's only 30 grade oil, but it feels like I'm pumping 90 because it's that cold and stiff. I think it'll probably take 2 of these, to start with, and then we'll have to check the level. It's got a funny setup here. It has 2 taps. If the oil doesn't overflow out of the top tap, you've got to check that it's going to overflow out the bottom tap. And one tap's higher than the other on the back of the transmission. It was an idea they had on the old Fords on the old steel wheel Fords and tractors. They had the same idea on them. It's a wonder on the old Fordsons, it was just a little tap you just turned. A quarter of a turn was on, quarter of a turn was off. And I often used to think, I wonder how many people either snapped those taps off or they were ploughing or reversing back in a paddock that had sticks or rocks or whatever, and the tap got bumped open, especially the lower tap, especially if they're working on a hillside, and the oil would be dribbling out and they wouldn't even know. And of course once you hear the big ends rattling, it's usually too late by then. Gee, this is going to take a while. Yep, it's going in there. It's got to suck air soon, surely. I need a longer story. Can't be too far away from empty. There we go. Time for another drum. going to be much easier just to swap the pump over than what it is to get underneath there and pull that hose in and out. Really difficult to do that, especially with that stiff hose. When the drum gets down a bit lower, I will turn it so the pump is on the downhill side to try and get more oil out of the drum. Put that lid back onto there. I'll start off with it like that. The cameraman's up on top of Bluey having a bit of a look over the back of Wally, and he reckoned there's some sort of an ecosystem going on in the back of Wally that's probably been there for 20 plus years. If we can keep working on Wally and get Wally going and driving, we'll be able to go down the paddock somewhere and lift the hoist and tip all that out the back. That'll be pretty exciting to do that. We must be getting close. Well, I suppose it's one way to get warm on a cold winter's morning. I won't complain because there's no wind, and I reckon it's always worse if the wind's blowing a gale. That makes it feel much colder. Empty, which is good. Here we are with the two taps. That's the high and that's the low. So it is facing downhill at the back. But there's nothing coming out, so I might have to add a bit more even. Oh, there it is there now. It is up to the height. It just took a while to get there, probably because the oil's cold and thick. But I'll just try the low. I won't just try the low, it's just too hard. There we go. The low's probably got dirt in it anyway. And it's that thick. I can see it has got a bit of dirt on the other end of it, but obviously the oil must be up to that one. They probably need a bit of a vac out to suck the dirt, or a bit of a clean out with a screwdriver. But yeah, you can see it doesn't really look like 30 grade dripping out of there, does it? It looks more like 90 the way it's dripping very slowly. What it really needs to start up, then putting in and out of gear a few times, and then come and check it then. I'll have to tighten that one up. It probably really needs starting, driving, putting on flat ground, and then check the oil level after it's been probably driven forward and back or whatever a couple of times. But what I will do, I will put the date on here. So I've got some brake clean here and I'm going to wipe that off. And I'll write the date on there when that was done. Got the date on there now. I've just got to put that filler cap back on carefully so I don't knock any dirt in as I'm doing it. It's a very simple idea. Here we go. Job's done. Looking into the future to get Wally out in the paddock where we can tip the ecosystem out of the bin, we've been slowly working on different things along the way. I've done a few videos on different things. We've replaced both the hoses on these lift rams at the back. Then we work our way forward. We've done power steering hoses here. We've done the main feed line here, which was a really hard job because the pipe's that stiff and strong. We've also got a leaking pipe on the inside there, which comes back to somewhere in here, which we may have to take off this exhaust manifold here to get in there, down in there, to undo that pipe to replace it. So we're slowly getting there. The pipe down in here that's leaking, I don't think that's going to stop us tipping the bin on the back. So it's just a process of eliminations. And then once we get the strut and everything back on here, well, once that bit's done, well then everything should be good then. I'd really like to drain the cooling system and put some new inhibitor or coolant in the thing to make sure that it doesn't get rust in the block or whatever. It's got a massive radiator in it. It's radiator from there to there, right up to there, plus the size of the engine. So I don't know how many litres of coolant it's going to take to do that job. That was another job. It had a leaking air tank and that was fixed. I should rig up the start button, get the start button working. We don't know whether it's got a bad connection somewhere or whether the actual start button itself is worn out, but we'll have to get a multimeter and get in there and check all that and make it so we don't have to crawl underneath every time and hot wire the starter motor to start it. There's the fuel filters. I was going to change them in this video, but then I changed my mind and I thought I'll wait. The truck is running uphill on a pretty steep angle at the moment, so I'd really like to get it going. If anything, I'd rather like to have it turned around where it's facing downhill. That way when you undo the filters, the fuel will be less inclined just to run back to the tank, and then you have a big heap of problems with air in the system. So it has got a tap on the side there, I see. So that's probably another reason why they've got the tap there, so they can turn that tap off, change the filters and turn the tap back on. The other thing I did wonder was if they start the engine and it has a runaway where they can just come and cut the fuel supply off there rather than try and shut the flap off up here, which is seized. The flap doesn't work anymore. We tried to shut that when we first went out to have a look at it and we couldn't get that unseized. There's a bit of an update for all the Wally fans. I know it's been well overdue, but there's always been other stuff going on. Cameraman's been busy, or I've been busy working on other projects. If there's anything anybody would like to see to do with Wally, leave a comment below and I'll try and include it in the next video. Otherwise, that'll be about it for this video. So until next time, thanks very much for watching.